Now starting us off with number 10 is the choking. This one's from Redditor River Acre, who said he had this dream or sleep paralysis event when he was in college. When his eyes opened, the room was in complete darkness except the small bit of light coming from under the door from the hallway. He was finding it really hard to breathe for some reason, and then his heart sank as he heard someone breathing really heavily near him, and then he realized someone was staring at him from the corner of the room. Now initially he thought it was his roommate, so he was like, what the hell, how is he even awake right now? He tried to keep his own breathing steady as this other breathing he could hear got louder and closer. Now the figure in the corner started laughing hysterically in a demonic, distorted kind of fashion. The user tried to scream or yell, but he just had no voice. He couldn't move, couldn't speak. It was just a common case of sleep paralysis, really. As he continues staring at the figure in the corner, he sees it jump onto his roommate who's in his own bed and tear him limb from limb. He couldn't even look away, he was just fixated on his roommate being shredded to pieces, and all he could hear was him choking on his own blood as the figure started eating him. Imagine hearing your best friend choking on their own blood and all you can do is watch. The user tried to jolt himself awake properly or throw himself off his bed, but he just couldn't do it. When the figure was done eating his friend, he made his way to the user with his bloody, bony fingers. The figure started licking his cheek as he screamed obscenities into his ear, and then he woke up properly. Or he got eaten. It's a 50-50. Coming in at number 9 are the Dementors. Now this one honestly made me feel a type of way. Like I needed a minute just to process this one afterwards. Shared by an anonymous Reddit user, she said she had a dream where she was asleep within her dream. Like she was trying to fall asleep in her dream, and as soon as she started dozing off, she started hearing a faint whispering all around her. She assumed her parents were talking in their bedroom or something, but then realized she could feel the breath of these whispers on her face. Hence, they were coming from inside her room. She opened her eyes and saw these black floating figures which could only be described as the Dementors from Harry Potter, honestly. They were whispering the word death while floating around her, except they all had faces of people she loved. Friends, siblings, even her own parents. One by one, the Dementors rose above her and started piercing her with this large fang or tooth. And as they did, they would let out the most high-pitched scream before fading into the fang and into the girl's body. And every time they did it, it was this excruciating pain that she just couldn't describe. Even in the dream, it felt all too real. Now after 5 Dementor creatures did this, she thought she literally couldn't take it anymore and was about to die, and then she finally woke up. At number 8 we have the Smile. Now this one's from an anonymous person who said one night they were suffering from sleep paralysis and they woke up feeling really off. They couldn't move, but it wasn't that was getting to them, it was just this feeling of pure dread. Now imagine all the anxiety attacks in the world bottled up into a jar and put into your stomach. That's how it felt. The person felt like time didn't exist, like they didn't even exist. They looked towards their bedroom door and saw this 7 feet tall figure just standing there. The person wasn't ghostly looking or hollow or anything, it was just a normal person. Now the user remembered every single detail of what the person was wearing: black Doc Marten boots, blue jeans, a puffy jacket, which just didn't make sense since it was summer and hot as hell. But the creepiest part was the person couldn't see the man's face at all. No matter how hard they concentrated, they just couldn't see his face. But then they realized it was because he had no face. It was just featureless. There was a dark void where his face should have been, and they both just stared at each other for a minute before the figure took a step forward and the person just fainted. Complete KO. I don't even understand how they knew they were staring because they didn't have eyes. But anyway, they didn't wake up for another 6 hours, and mind you, they had had a full night's sleep when they saw the figure, so they didn't just go back to sleep, they full on passed out. Filling our number 7 slot is The Exorcism of Reacher. So this one's from Suavda Tripathy, who said she has a bit of a hyperactive imagination, and this dream happened shortly after she watched the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose. One night she dreamed her and her friend Reacher were walking towards a building to go to its roof. Reacher starts going up the steps and her body starts twitching weirdly, and Suvadra asks her what's up, and Reacher just starts running up the stairs and Suvadra just can't keep up. When she finally gets to the top, Reacher has her back to her and she calls out to her. Richa turns around, suddenly very pregnant and helpless. Before Suvajra could say anything to her, Richa's body suddenly jerked and she started bending backwards just like Emily does in the film, and if you haven't seen it, consider yourself lucky. Richa was screaming as she was bending and she was trying to reach out and grab Suvajra, but she just couldn't reach. She started shouting for Suvajra to help her, but it wasn't her voice, it was some deep, evil, distorted voice, and now her face was contorted and savage as well. So she was a mix of pure evil and helplessness. As Suvajra finally reached her, Richa's back went fully backwards, basically piercing her pregnant belly with her spine. She then somehow moved while in that position and then jumped off the roof of the building. Suvajra screamed and ran to the edge, but then woke up in bed screaming in real life. She was sweating buckets and hyperventilating, and after that she felt she should just hold off on scary movies. Honestly, I cried while watching that movie, and then I didn't watch another horror movie for like 3 years, so I get it, Suvajra, I get it. That movie? No. Now at number 6 is The Devil Within. I feel like sometimes we dream of ourselves doing we would never do in real life. Like sometimes when I'm dreaming, I know I'm dreaming, so I'm just like, hey, let's just enjoy the ride, see what I get up to. But other people, I mean, they have different things in mind. And this one comes from Redditor Cozy138, who said he dreamed he had run away from home and was walking through dunes of snow that were 5 feet high. The user hid behind one of these snowbanks as he looked back at his family and saw they were all smiling around a fire, all happy, clearly not caring about the fact he had just run away. He then ran towards a bunch of shops in this plaza area and saw a grill that had a wire brush next to it to clean it. At this point it was midnight and he saw his little brother come out of one of the stores, so he suddenly decided to take the wire brush and beat him with it. He kept beating him till bits of the wire started tearing his brother's skin off, and he just kept doing it till a huge chunk of the middle of his face was straight up gone. He then used the wire to choke him to the point they both fell on the ground, and the user was just crying while strangling his brother with this wire. When he finally died, and wow, he sure took a freaking beating before he did, the user woke up and was just like, what the hell? Guys, trust no one, not even yourself, clearly. Coming in at number 5 is The Clown. Now this one came from Hannah Toda, who said in her dream she was in the middle of a deserted wonderland. Dead trees were surrounding her, her boots were 60 centimeters deep in snow, and in the distance she spotted a cottage. She suddenly lost control of her legs as they carried her towards this eerie cottage. She started getting more and more anxious and worried, and then she saw the clown. It had red glowing eyes that pierced through her, and its grin showed its teeth, which were knives on their own, like legit tiny little knives. And mind you, the clown was small, yet her legs still took her to it, and that's when she felt the pain. Its teeth shredded through her flesh, tearing it open, and all of a sudden, everything just went black. Hannah woke up in her room, but she couldn't move. Her back was high in the air, and the pain where she'd been bitten was still very much there and very much real. She tried to get her back on the bed, but it went up again. She lost control of her body like she had sleep paralysis, but tried to talk her way out of it in her own head. She eventually got her body and back to calm down and woke up for real, and then couldn't get back to sleep for 3 hours. Clowns, man, they're an issue. They're a freaking issue. We have to get rid of them. This is a mission. At number 4 is the devil. I feel like that's someone that appears in many people's dreams. Like, I don't think I've ever dreamt about him personally, but I know so many people that have. And sadly, Reddit user Walla Bing Bang is one of them. She had a dream that she met this really hot guy and fell completely in love with him. Isn't that the dream for all of us? Isn't that all what we want? Anyway, it turns out the guy's actually the devil, and he tells her that she's dreaming, but she will bear his child on Earth. She looks down and sees she's 8 months pregnant and begins to cry as he forces her to do things she has no control over. She can't control her mind or her body, it just does what it's told. Almost like when someone's in a coma, but their mind is awake and can hear everything that's going on. Just like that. Even though I'm not her, but I'm pretty sure that's how she felt. Either way, she starts crying because it all seemed way too realistic, and then a week later, in the dream, she asks to shower. He lets her, and when she's in there, she reckons the only way to end this turmoil is to kill herself. But no matter how many times she slashes her wrists, no blood comes out. The devil then appears laughing at her and then takes a knife and cuts her stomach open and pulls her intestines out. And of course the other organs in there as well. He starts shouting at her and telling her torture will be her fate forever unless she follows through on keeping his child. But he just ripped her stomach open, so I'm confused on how the baby or the girl is even alive alive at this point. And at that point, she wakes up crying, no tear in her stomach, but no nothing. But she remembers a voice whispering to her, telling her she's gonna wake up now and that a baby of hers will be born on August 23rd. I mean, this was posted 6 years ago, so if you did end up having that baby on that date, please let us know, because I feel like a devil child is something we should all be aware of. You know, just do us that solid. Thank you. Filling our number 3 slot is life. So this one comes from an anonymous person who said the worst dream she's had was to do with some sort of devil creature. The thing was red and black stereotypically and had huge teeth, and it just came and sat on her as she slept. The devil was getting heavier and heavier, and she was starting to suffocate, and she legit thought she was gonna die. She couldn't scream or move, but she finally woke up, and real life was arguably worse. Now her husband told her something or some figure had been pressing on his chest trying to kill him, and when he opened his eyes, it was his wife. Biggest plot twist of 2019 confirmed. Now at number 2 is the baby. I wish this was like a cute one, like honestly I think we need a break, or maybe I do. Fortunately it is not, because otherwise it just wouldn't be on this list. It's a scary list. Either way, Reddit user Froom Loom said they had a dream where a baby had been left on their doorstep, and instead of taking it to the hospital or some adoption agency or keeping it, they decided to cook it, as we all would. They cut it up, and even though it was cut up, the head of the baby was screaming its lungs out. As the user put the baby in the pot and started boiling it, by some freak of nature, the baby started reassembling itself very slowly. The user then put the baby in the oven, and it somehow crawled out of the oven fully back together, bit the user's throat off, and then they bled to death. Now I love how the baby went from being the victim in this story to being the killer. I don't want to say the user deserved it, but they were about to eat a baby, so I think they high-key sort of did deserve it. No mercy. Amen Savage moments. And finally, at number 1 are the violet eyes. So this person has had their fair share of sleep paralysis episodes, but they recall this one as being the worst, and I fully agree. The person woke up to the sound of someone chuckling and saw a man walk into their room, and they were screwed up. I would use stronger language, but I can't. This is a PG channel. The figure had a demonic mask on that had boar fangs on it, twists on its cheeks, and violet serpent-like eyes that were just bulging out at him. Can you just imagine this monstrosity that's just walked into this kid's room like God save us all? He had a brown robe on as well with the hood over his head, and then he put his burlap sack on the ground. One by one, he pulled out every single person this person ever loved, ever cared about, was friends with, and each time he put them right in front of them so they'd make direct eye contact. It would then use its sharp nails to slit their throats and would make the person watch as blood poured from their throats. Imagine watching the life drain out of the eyes of every single person you care about. Like, I can't even imagine. After the bag was finally empty, the thing walked to his bed and stroked the person's face with his blood-soaked hands. He then took off his mask, and I quote, "I cannot honestly put into words what I saw beneath that mask. It was an ever-changing face of horror. It twisted and squirmed and never remained still for long, and each facial reconstruction was more terrifying than the last. The last thing he said was, 'Your life will be mine and your soul as well.' Then his face finally settled into one form, the person's own face." Dun dun dun. Starting us off with number 10 is Thanksgiving turkey. User Mash Skulls shared that about a month ago they had sleep paralysis. One morning they started hearing this distorted, deep, unfamiliar voice. They started hearing more than one voice and tried to move or wake up, but they couldn't. And this is where it gets really freaking screwed up. The user saw a bunch of faceless men with razor-sharp teeth coming towards them, grinding their teeth as they went. They were whispering food, food, food over and over again, and were legit holding knives and forks. Now imagine being unable to control or move your body as these cannibal creatures just coming towards you. Now they surrounded the user, climbed on top of them, and then carved them like a turkey. It gets graphic. They tore the user limb from limb. They went headfirst into the rest of their body like a bunch of starving hyenas. The user watched them take her own finger bones and use them as toothpicks. Can you even, I don't even want to imagine this. The user literally had to listen to Beethoven for 3 hours after the dream just to get the image of being eaten alive out of their head. And honestly, I don't even know what I would do in that position. Probably not Beethoven, maybe Mozart. Coming in at number 9 are the cats. I will shamelessly try and include cats in every video if I can. I don't even care. I don't even care if it's relevant. Anyway, this story comes from Redditor Gave a Sky, who said they recently had a dream they were in an apartment with a few cats. That's just my dream. I mean, that's my life actually. Anyway, everything seemed pretty normal and very real until one of the cats literally up and jumped out of the balcony. The person was a bit wary, so they sat sat in the kitchen just to collect their thoughts. Then one of the cats just sits next to them on a different chair, except the user just can't look at the cat. It felt like looking at the sun. The cat wasn't even bright, but they just couldn't look at it. Out of the periphery of their vision, they realized the cat was morphing into something else entirely. This menacing creature with a disturbing face. It morphed into some humanoid creature, and the user couldn't see its body, but its face was pale and square and had no features whatsoever except 2 eyes. The user immediately feels like the whole world is just closing in on them, and they wake up, but the creature is still there, getting closer. Realizing they're not actually awake yet, they somehow willed their unconscious body to fall off the bed in order to actually wake up. They ended up blacking out after they fell off the bed and refused to sleep alone for 4 days. Honestly, this is very impressive that they willed themselves to wake up when they were asleep. I feel like I wouldn't even know how to do that. At number 8, we have the woman. Honestly, I feel like everyone can somehow relate to this story, and I'll tell you why after. So this person shared one of the most terrifying dreams and said they actually suffer from really bad sleep paralysis. They have a rocking chair in their bedroom, and I don't know why they do. That's literally the first thing to get haunted, if anything. Like, why? Either way, one night they were laying on their bed unable to move, and they looked at the chair. There was a pale grey woman on the chair with blonde hair who was crying her eyes out while staring at the storyteller. And while she was crying her eyes out, she was also pulling out her insides. The person closed their eyes, and they were trying everything to not see this right now, and then they felt this heavy pressure on their chest. They opened their eyes and saw this woman sitting on their chest pulling out her inner organs. The storyteller was so terrified they peed themselves, and mind you, they were 20 years old at the time. I can't even imagine the horror this person must have been going through, and I always think, honestly, why I said it was relatable is because I always think my chair with a bunch of laundry on top is a person in the dark, and I know a lot of other people get scared of that as well, so I was like, oh my god, hashtag relatable, but with the organ pulling woman, I'm just like, I hope that's not relatable. Please. Filling our number 7 slot is Gracie's mum, not to be confused with Stacy's mum. Reddit user Rakis11 shared the story of how when she was 5 years old she had her first ever nightmare, but things didn't really end even after she woke up. In her dream, she was at her friend Gracie's house and they were drawing on her deck with chalk, and mind you, she lived on a cliff near the seaside. Views for days. Either way, Gracie's mum came out and yelled at the girls for drawing on the deck, and then her mum started turning into something evil. She was getting uglier and uglier, and her skin had just changed shades like 4 times. The user could see this happening, but Gracie had no idea what was going on. Either way, the mum realizes the user knows she's evil and throws them both off the cliff, and that's when she woke up. Now, a few weeks pass after this dream, and then one day Gracie isn't at school. Apparently, Gracie had drowned in the pool at her house, and her parents had filled the pool in, got divorced, and moved straight away, which is sus as hell. Either way, 8 years later, the user's brother, who wasn't even born at the time of the incident, was just walking on a trail near Gracie's old house, and he goes, "Gracie says hello." The user was like, "What are you talking about, Cam?" And all he said was, "The wet girl." The user never told her brother about Gracie. He had no idea it even happened. But I feel like her dream about the evil mum had something to do with what really happened. Like, it's just too suspicious for like a couple's kid to die and then quickly just like fill up the pool and just move away. Like, it's something just not sitting right with me. Now at number 6 is The Mask. This one was shared by an anonymous person who said one night he was watching TV in bed when out of nowhere his TV just went black. Despite turning it on from the remote a bunch of times, it just wasn't working, which was weird since this had never happened before. Either way, while trying to get it to work, he ended up falling asleep. He started feeling this huge pressure on his chest and his face was getting pushed to look at the wall. Now something or someone was grabbing his face and turning it to face the ceiling now with such force he thought his jawbone was about to break. When he opened his eyes in this state, he saw this massive black figure on top of him with a mask as a face that was fixed in the creepiest smile. But it wasn't even a proper mask, the thing had just drawn it on itself. It puts its finger on the guy's lips and just says shh. He then literally fainted from fear, and when he woke up, he made a beeline for his mum's room. And honestly, as any honest adult, I would do the same. No shame. Go to mommy's room straight away. She can protect you from all. Now coming in at number 5 is the darkness. Now this one's from Redditor the Pixel Mouse, who has this recurring dream about a creature she dubbed the darkness. The monster appears in 2 forms. The first is in human form at a crowded place like a mall for example, and she won't even realize it's there until it starts appearing everywhere around her, and then everyone else just disappears. At this point the darkness starts running at her in super speed, and as soon as it grabs her, she wakes up. In the second rarer form, she'll randomly be in a room in her house, and as she goes into another room it'll go dark straight away, and she'll know she's about to get royally screwed over. Like, at least she's self-aware, she knows it's happening, she knows it's coming. Even if she tries to escape this dark room, she gets pulled back in, so she just literally closes her eyes, waits for the darkness to grab her, and then she wakes up. The only thing she knows about its form is that it has long sharp fingers, because that's all she's ever really touched. Man's eyes are closed for the rest of the time, so the monster could literally take any true form. None of us will ever know. At number 4 is the little girl. This one's from Reddit user Pretends He Knows Stuff, who said one summer a few years ago he had a super high fever and sleep paralysis, which is probably the shittiest combo ever. Throw diarrhea into the mix and then it'd really be the shittiest combo. Pun intended. Anyway, that night he had a dream that everyone he knew was crying over this little girl, and when he got close to her he realized why. The girl was missing half of her face, and the guy said what a shame to her, and all of a sudden the room went grey. I love how this girl's face is half missing and all he said was what a shame. Like, you can come up with something better than that. Anyway, in this grey room he wakes up and sees the girl inches from his face, and all she keeps saying is "you did this to me." Except after saying it a bunch of times, she's not a little girl anymore, now she's like an elderly woman, and then that woman goes and jumps on his chest. Like, grandma's into acrobatics lately. The guy thought his lungs were burning up, and he claims that he actually prays every day still that that dream never happens to him again. May God be with you. Filling our number 3 slot is the spider. This one was shared by an anonymous user who said they dreamt they were walking through a wasteland, probably from Fallout. The game Fallout, if you guys know it, you probably do. Either way, they were with a group of people they didn't know, and everything was a weird shade of either green or black. Like, no other color even existed in this dream. Either way, they entered into a ruined building and they found someone crouched down on the ground with their back to them. For some weird dream logic reason, the person just knew they knew the person who was crouching down. They were so relieved, and as they went to touch the crouched person on the shoulder, everything became slow motion, like they were underwater almost. As they touched the person's shoulder, everything became normal speed again, and they turned around to look at each other. Except this person, they didn't know them. The person had one eye, and instead of having an iris or pupils or even whites, it was just a freaking spider as an eye. A black spider, and the bits that should have been white were green. The person literally jumped awake, and only when they were awake did they realize that thing was their sister. 20 years on, they remember the dream in such vivid detail, which goes to show how much it really scarred them. I hate insects, so if I saw a cyclops person with a spider for an eye, I would off myself. There's no hope for me now. Done with it. I don't want to be on this planet anymore. Now at number 2 is the 2-part Banshee. So this also came from an anonymous person, and they recall 2 slightly linked dreams that they had when they were 7 years old and one right now. In the first dream, they were laying in bed trying to sleep. Bored, they were like, let me just look at the shadows on my wall till I fall asleep. But the more they noticed the shadows, the faster the shadows started moving until they fully came off the walls. They started tugging at the person's feet, and all of a sudden 3 toddlers climbed onto the bed, and if that wasn't creepy enough, they all had glowing yellow eyes. Like, great, honestly, what else can go wrong? Love it. Simultaneously, the 3 babies let out the most high-pitched scream the person had ever heard before pulling them off the bed. And that was the first dream, which all in all was horrific but doable. Years and years later, the person had another dream. They were walking to the bathroom to get something from their cabinet, and as soon as they closed it, they hear the same high-pitched scream that the toddlers had let out all those years ago. When the person looked into the mirror on the cabinet, they saw that the bathtub behind them was full of blood, and a little girl was standing in the middle of it holding a freaking knife. Now the person who was looking at this started fainting in slow motion, and as they were falling, everything just started glitching and distorting, and the girl in the tub was just smiling and smiling as she moved towards the person. I just have to take a few deep breaths to digest this story. Even though I've already read it since I've written about it, I still need to digest it again because that was too much. And finally, at number 1 is the basement. According to Flugu, which is this girl's username, when she was 8 years old, she used to have this recurring dream that wouldn't stop for months. She even forced herself to stay awake for 3 whole days just so she wouldn't have to see this dream again. And honestly, if that doesn't set this story up well, nothing will. Now in her dream, she's in her basement with her sisters getting something to drink when all of a sudden her sisters' faces just start getting really weird. Their noses and mouths start shrinking and their eyes take up 90% of their face. The girl starts screaming and running up the stairs, but the sister creatures grab her neck and pull her down the stairs. By the time she's fallen down all these stairs and reached the bottom, one of the sister creatures pulls her up from the neck. When the girl looks at the creature, her face becomes oddly normal and human, except it's not human. She seems to have like another layer of skin on top of her face, and before the Flugu can even figure out what the hell is going on, the creature starts screaming like a demon, and all she can do is scream out of fear in response. The dream was so bad that the first time she had it, her mum told her she screamed for 3 hours straight before waking up. And that last bit really got to me because like how terrified you have to be to like literally be screaming 3 hours when you're unconscious. It's getting me in the feels, it's making me feel a type of way.
Starting off this countdown, we have the Demon Leader. This Reddit user claims that he was visited by a strange and powerful demon woman in his dreams. He claims that the dream started off with him being in a room full of praying women. That's when a strange woman in a dark cloak appeared. He knew that the woman was not human. He could sense her evil presence. He then called her out in front of everyone saying she's a demon. I mean, I don't think that's the smartest thing to do, but The woman then approached him and took off her cloak, revealing that she was an old, wrinkly woman with dark, evil eyes. From there, she looked him dead in the eyes and said, "I can't wait to see you hanging from your neck." He claims that when he woke up, he had pain all around his neck. He also claims that every so often he will experience waves of darkness where he envisions hanging himself. He thinks that this demon is latched onto him and is trying to control him. That's terrifying. And in our ninth spot, we have Succubus. So this individual believes that they were haunted by the succubus demon in their dreams. Basically, succubus dates back to medieval times. It's a demon that can transform themselves into attractive female to attract men. Then it's said that they can eat a man's soul, or if the men are repeatedly visited by her in their dreams, then she can even cause death. So the Reddit user Yamhead14 posted this dream. He said that it was a very vivid dream that took place in a scary abandoned warehouse. That's when this demon woman arrived and tried to seduce him. He said that she looked attractive, but he knew something was off with her. She tried to force herself on him, but he ended up fighting her off and escaped. When he woke up, he researched about his dream and found images of the demon that looked just like the lady from his dream. Before then, he had never even seen or heard of this demon. What's freaky is how another Reddit user commented on the post saying that he too had an identical dream that also took place in a warehouse with the same demon. Could it be that she is a real demon trying to find her next victim? In our 8th spot, we have the Dark Demon. This next woman claims that she has had super lifelike encounters with demons in her sleep. One night she was sleeping on her couch when she woke up to a small shadow hovering over her. Suddenly her eyes were forced shut and she couldn't open them. Then she felt this demon pacing back and forth beside her. She claims that it was heavy since every step that it took, it shook the couch. She also said that she could feel his anger radiating off of him. After some time, he finally spoke and said, "Why can't you just follow me?" She said that she swears that this was a real encounter and not just a dream. She truly felt this demon's presence. Making our way down the list at number 7, we have the Demonic Ritual. This next woman had a dream where she was participating in a satanic ritual in an old house. She said that all the other people also involved in this ritual had blurry faces. They were all in a circle and were chanting in unison and also contorting their bodies. When the ritual was over, her vision went entirely gray. But she saw figures in white robes entering through the windows and doors. But they weren't human. Their eyes were entirely black. Each figure chose one of the participants and entered their body. The woman tried to fight back from this demon entering her body, but failed. Next thing she remembers is being in a trance and being controlled by this demon. She also claims that when she woke up, her whole body hurt. So could it be that in her dream she helped summon and release demons? Let's hope not. In our 6th spot, we have Babadook. This next individual claims that he is constantly haunted by a demon that eerily resembles Babadook. Babadook is a tall, pale-faced creature that torments its victims once they become aware of his reality. In his dreams, this Babadook-looking demon would float over his bed, slowly coming closer and closer to him. He would lock eyes with him, and this demon would always have this wide, evil grin plastered on his face. The individual remains helpless and frozen while the demon comes closer and closer. He is always overcome with negative feelings when this happens. He even claims that he can feel the demon's breath on his face. Then when the demon is inches away from his face, he disappears and he wakes up. This is a reoccurring dream for him. This demon just continues to haunt him. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the demon child. This next woman says that she is always tormented by a demon of a young girl with dark black eyes. She says that her dreams will start off pleasant until the girl enters and forcibly drags her into a nightmare. She says that once this demon girl enters her dreams, then dark things start to happen, such as dead people will look in through her windows, or she'll end up watching her loved ones die, or she'll even see herself die. She says that while these nightmares unfold, the demon just stands there and watches it all. This woman is convinced that this little girl demon is responsible for all her bad dreams, since she's just always there when they happen. In our 4th spot, we have the dark figure. This man remembers having a dream where he woke up feeling lifeless, as if he just died. In his dream, he got out of bed and peered out from his bedroom to the hallway. That's when he saw a tall man standing there, staring at him. He said that this man was about 7 feet tall. He was wearing all black clothes, which consisted of big heavy boots, jeans, and a puffy jacket. The scariest part is that he had no face at all. He said that a dim blue light was illuminating the man's face, but he just had no facial features. His face was purely black. That's when he knew that this wasn't a human and it was indeed a demon. From there, he was frozen in place, stuck staring at this demon. He felt as if this demon was sucking away his soul. He claims that he practically saw it leaving his body. When there was nothing else left, he passed out. When he woke up from the dream, he felt very lightheaded and weak. My question is, who is this demon and why is he so fashionably dressed? In our 3rd spot, we have Lamia. This next individual claims that she was visited by the demon Lamia. In Greek mythology, Lamia was the queen of Libya who is known for murdering children. She's said to be an extremely violent and powerful demon. In her dream, she was walking down a black hallway. Everything was dark, but she could see a glow at the end of this long hallway. She had to feel her way along the sides of the walls to safely make it to the light, which was just one flickering candle. However, when she goes to pick up the candle, it's blown out. All of a sudden, her ears start to ring and burn. The walls shake and the candle she's holding relits to reveal Lamia standing inches from her face, screaming at her. She looks down and she's standing on a pile of dead bodies. She tries to run, but the bodies grab at her and scratch her arms and legs. When she woke up from her dream, her ears were still ringing. She also noticed that she was covered in a couple of bruises on her arms and legs that looked like marks from people grabbing her. Coming in our 2nd spot, we have the Shadow Demon. This next story comes from a man named Andrew from Ohio. He claims that for 2 weeks in a row, he started experiencing really vivid and dark dreams. In particular, he constantly dreamt about a shadow demon. He says that this demon was about 6 to 7 feet tall. His face was completely pale. He had no facial features. He said that the demon was wearing a long black trench coat with a black hat. His legs were super long. In his dream, the demon stands and just stares at Andrew. It then causes Andrew to burst into tears. He also says that this demon can climb up on the walls. What's scary is that apparently his dream came to life. One day he was in the kitchen talking to his mom when he saw the demon from his dream standing in front of the fridge. He immediately started panicking when he saw him, but when his mom turned to see what he was freaking out about, the shadow demon disappeared. So that's terrifying. His demon from his nightmares literally crossed over to the real world. And in our number 1 spot, we have the decaying body. This next individual probably had the worst dream and the scariest encounter with a demon, in my opinion, because she was greeted by Bloody Mary. It just creeps me out saying her name. So basically, this woman fell asleep facing sideways, and she has a mirror facing her bed, so when she's laying on her side, she's just directly facing this mirror. That's when she woke up and she couldn't move her body at all. She felt like she was being forced to stare directly into this mirror. At first, she could just see herself, but slowly her appearance started to change. She started to look disfigured and as if her body was decaying right in front of her. Then all of a sudden, Bloody Mary appears as a glowing figure in the mirror. She stands there staring right into her eyes. That's when the woman's eyes and nose started to bleed. Bloody Mary screams, the mirror cracks, and the woman wakes up from her dream. Scariest thing of all, she claims that that same night, her and her friends were drinking and fooling around and ended up playing the Bloody Mary game. There you go. Reason 110 why you should not play this game. Also, why is it considered a game? It's just absolutely terrifying. It's not fun at all.